So let's take a look at what you have here. Okay, so we were talking about our bodies, what we can do with our bodies. Now we're talking about non-lethal weapons that
Yes.
can be lethal. What do we have here?
Okay, so um, a weapon. So the only thing on this list that is 100% non-lethal
Hmm.
is mace.
Okay.
Pepper spray can trigger an I'll get into the specifics, but every one of these things, it's not the weapon itself, it's how you use it. And so a
Mm,
good example, sometimes people they see in the news or in a TV show where a person is driving their car, just going to run over a police officer. The
hmm.
officer pulls their gun and kills the driver,
Right.
and that's legal
Yes.
because the car is being used as a deadly weapon.
Right.
And remembering from last week's self-defense law, if it's a deadly weapon that's being used against you, you don't have to select an equivalent deadly weapon. You can use any deadly weapon to protect yourself.
Ah, that's a good distinction. Yeah.
And so, except for mace, every one of those other things on the list could possibly be deadly. And
Okay.
so, um, so let's get into that and
Let's
see how that works.
let's do it. So we've talked about, oops, multitasking here. So I go to here.
Yep.
Okay.
So mace, there's actually two kinds of mace. CN, which is purified tear gas from that was first developed for the trench warfare in World War I. And CN is water soluble. And that's what I used to carry when I was a police officer.
Hmm.
What I liked about CN is that I can spray it. I know we've got 100 years of history that it's never killed anybody. It's never caused an anaphylactic shock.
Okay.
And being water soluble, all I have to do is get water into the person's eyes and they're completely deactivated, decontaminated.
Wow.
I can switch the paint on and I can switch the paint off. And
Okay.
I don't want anyone to hurt beyond gaining compliance, right?
Right.
And so I was a big fan of CN. I never carried CS. We were allowed to carry CS.
Hmm.
CS is purified tear gas as well, but it's a different formula. It's a oil soluble instead of a water soluble formula.
Oh, okay.
It was used in the caves in Vietnam, in the tunnels to clear out Viet Cong. It's got about a 15 or 20% death rate when it's used in high doses.
Oh, wow.
So it's marketed as non-lethal,
Right.
and probably if we're thinking Viet Cong tunnels, that the concentration was so high there, that's why we had the high death rate. But it can trigger an anaphylactic shock, a fatal allergic reaction in anybody, and you don't know who you're spraying. You don't know what their history is.
Right.
Um,
So it sounds like is the key difference. One is water based, the other is oil based, and
mhm.
oil is just more difficult to get off.
It is.
And
It
that's
is.
probably the key distinction. Would you say between
That
those?
and that CN has never caused a death. It's never caused permanent disability.
Got it.
CS can cause permanent disability. It's pretty rare, but
Okay.
it can cause death.
Okay.
Um, so while we're thinking about these things, oh, and you see, it's cheap to buy. You should practice with it always. Um, and then once you use it, the containers that they sell for personal carry are so small that you really shouldn't reuse it. You should buy a container that you're just going to practice with, and then buy a container that you're going to carry.
Smart. Yeah.
Um, Both CN and CS work on dogs.
Okay.
CS works a little bit faster. There's a lag time of 10 to 20 seconds with CN, and a lot of bad things can happen in 10 or 20 seconds,
Yeah.
where CS is a much shorter lag time before it kicks in.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And then the cons, both are sold as both streams and sprays.
Hmm.
And I had a patrol partner who bought a spray uh, uh, canister of CS or CN. And boy, it seemed like a good idea. We were out. There was some kind of a brawl. He brought it. It's like I don't have to aim it, right? It's like hairspray. It's just this fog that comes out.
Yeah.
And he took it out and he hit the button, and the wind was blowing towards his face, and it all blew back in his face, and he was
No.
disabled almost instantly.
Oh no.
And
Okay.
so then I had to protect him from the people that he was about to spray.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
the thing with the stream is that even the stream has some particles that don't stay in the solid stream, so there's often back spray.
Right.
I've used Mace a lot, and unless you're completely upwind of it, you will almost certainly get some burning in your eyes.
Okay.
Um, and then the bottom one is when somebody is super high on adrenaline, not normal adrenaline, but they're like in a rage,
Yeah.
it doesn't work at all.
Okay.
It's almost like it's just water. It just completely doesn't work. And
Okay.
it also doesn't work for certain drugs. I don't know if it works on people that are high on meth. And in terms of people being high on drugs, meth is the most common drug that somebody might be high on that they might hurt you, right? People
Yeah.
don't hurt other people when they're on heroin. They don't
Right.
hurt other people when they're smoking pot.
Right.
Generally don't hurt other people on most of the other drugs, hallucinogens.
Right.
They may hurt themselves,
Yeah.
but they don't hurt other people. But
Yeah.
meth creates this kind of a, a clinical mania where
Right.
people become very violent. I saw that working in the emergency room as a crisis counselor.
Well, and this is a little off the topic, but there's a new article out in the Atlantic that talks about the new meth and talks
Yes,
about the new process um,
yes,
manufacturing procedures that make it worse on every level for that. I mean, it sounds like you've seen that, right?
I've read
Firsthand
it.
in the hospital, or yeah,
Oh, I
but you
have
know,
seen it. I
okay,
have
yeah,
seen it firsthand.
yeah.
I read the article, so I know
You
exactly
know
the
which one?
article you're talking about. I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
Um, and I recommend it not only as a public safety sort of thing, but also as to have a deeper understanding of the problem of homelessness in this country,
yeah,
um, and have compassion for
yeah.
people that are caught up in a mental health issue that doesn't make sense if you're not addicted.
Right, right. Yeah, this drug is monstrous. What it's doing to
It
the
is.
human body and brain and societies. I'm here in LA and I literally walk by this every day.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
reading that article, I'll try to share that as well. But it's yeah, a lot to that. So thank you for distinguishing back to what we're talking about the mace. So you're saying it may or may not work on certain kinds, and so meth is one of the ones that generally
I
is.
don't
You
know.
don't know? Okay,
So
okay.
while I was in the hospital, our security, hospital security carried um, a pepper spray gel,
Yes,
but
yeah,
they never used it on somebody who had gone psychotic because of the meth. What we did do is we used physical force, and so I have, even at my age, uh, tackled people and held them down because security weren't able uh, to manage. They needed 3 people to hold this person down. 2 wasn't enough.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're gonna have a whole other conversation about mental health because I think that's a really important conversation. But kind of sticking to our topic today, is this? I think we're good on this slide. Do you want me to move
Yes.
forward?
Nope.
So
Good.
we have pepper spray. Let's talk about that. I
Yes.
know this is a really popular with folks, so let's dive in.
So pepper spray was first marketed towards for mailmen to carry to repel dogs.
My dad was a mailman. He totally carried this. Yeah,
Yep.
I remember him talking about that. Yeah.
It works better on dogs. And the thing about pepper spray that's different about mace, either CN or CS, is that it causes the tissue around the eyes to swell closed,
Right.
and it causes the mucous membranes in the nose and throat to swell almost closed.
Yeah.
Um, I've read that you shouldn't carry, you can buy pepper spray up to 10% pretty easily. I've read that you probably shouldn't carry anything that has more than 5%
Okay.
because there is a risk of permanent damage, and there's a risk of the person not being able to breathe at all.
Is there national guidelines on that, or should people check within their state? Would it vary state to state? Do you know?
I don't know if there's any law
Okay.
about it, so I would check state to state, but
Okay.
I've done a lot of research on what's a safe concentration to carry.
Yeah.
And like people buy bear spray, and that's over 10%,
Yeah.
or at least the minimum is 10%.
Yeah.
Um, so just like the Mace, you only want to buy a solid stream. You don't want to buy a fogger. There's certain shapes and sizes of containers, which I'll cover in a future slide.
Okay.
Both with pepper spray and with Mace, what I learned was that you want to target you want to basically shoot the person's center chest
Okay.
and then draw the stream up,
Mm-hmm.
because people can see the stream coming towards them and they can duck.
Aha.
But we all, as kids, we all played with hoses. We know once we get that stream going, we know that we can adjust it. We've got that sort of muscle memory already built in.
Yeah.
And so if I shot a stream of Mace at a person and I got their chest and they moved, my hand would just follow the arc of their head.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't, as long as your body is warmer than the environment, in Maine it always was,
Okay.
there's a flow of air that flows, your body heats the air, it flows upward around you, right? There's a circulation pattern that we
Yeah.
don't really notice. Well, that would carry the fumes of the Mace up into the eyes.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Okay.
even if I didn't get their face, if I somehow completely missed, they would have these fumes coming up that would be disabling.
Okay. Yeah, because
And you can move your head pretty quickly. It's hard to move the center of your chest really quickly.
that's a really good point. Oh, that's really good. And I thought what you said was really interesting about like the example of your partner getting the back spray. So if the back spray is going to disable you, then it's certainly that fume that's aimed at them. I hadn't thought about the logic of that before. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Okay,
Anything
pros,
else?
it can be used at
Yeah.
distances. I've got a smaller pepper spray that I carry with me in my purse. And there's an example of that coming up on a slide. It's got about an 8 to 10 foot range, and you
Okay.
should never let anyone who's threatening you get closer than 8 or 10 feet.
Right.
They shouldn't be able to, there's no way they should come within 3 or 4 feet of you, and you should get them stopped 8 or 10 feet out. So even the small containers will project out that far as long
Okay.
as it's the first or second time you've used it.
Okay.
I've got a slightly larger container that was marketed for police work that has maybe a 12 or 15 foot range,
Okay.
but it's still small enough it fits in my coat pocket easily.
Nice.
And I've covered all the rest, I think.
Okay. Oh, dogs. Is this your dog?
This is my dog.
Oh, your dog is so sweet. Oh.
And so I chose this picture. It's hard to see because her face is so dark, but her eyes are open. She's on full-on alert.
I can see
She's
that.
being
Yeah.
super cute. She is just a cuddle ball and a wiggle worm, but she's always on, and because of her breed. And when she senses aggression, she goes from the sweetest little cuddle bug to, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And she can shift in less than a second.
Wow.
And when she shifts, she starts arcing her back. The hair on the back of her shoulders goes up like a lion's mane, and she could just, she's scary.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that she's a German Shepherd, people look at her and they don't know. And that's all
Right.
I want. I want somebody to not know if it's safe.
Yeah.
Because if they don't know it's safe, they're not going to bother me.
Right.
What I like about her, she was bred for companionship, not aggression.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not bred to do police or military guard dog work. She's bred more for emotional support dog or seeing eye dog,
Yeah.
but she's still got that edge that shepherds have.
Yeah.
And if she knows that somebody's being nice, she wants to be petted. She'll wiggle all up to them.
Oh.
Um, but if somebody's not sure,
Yeah.
she's not sure of them either.
Yeah.
Um, and the last part of that slide talked about, yeah, oh wait.
Here we go. Yeah. Sorry.
Um, so dogs are expensive,
Yeah.
right? She
Yeah.
was, $1,000 roughly.
Yeah.
And then vet bills and everything, that's another $1,000 a year, probably, with
Yeah.
food and treats and vets and all the
Yeah.
other good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted a police dog when I was in law enforcement. I had friends that were dog handlers with State Patrol. They were canine units.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that they never used female dogs. And I
Okay.
asked, why not? I mean, half the population is female. Why do you only use male dogs? And I thought the answer was going to be, well, male dogs are larger and they're more intimidating. That wasn't the answer I got. The answer that I got was that male dogs can be called off. Female dogs, when they go into attack, right? We have a saying, mama bear. We
Yeah.
don't have a saying, papa bear, right?
Right.
She's definitely mama bear. I
Oh,
know
wow.
that I'm part of her pack,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and she would defend my life the way she would defend her pups.
Right. Right. When you shared this with me, and I saw that, I had never heard that about female dogs, and I just thought it was pretty cool. that, that the female is more lethal.
Yes.
We don't mess around.
Yeah, no, when it goes there.
When it goes there, it's there.
Yeah.
You're right. She just, I see the sweetness in her, and she's a shepherd. So yeah, she's a cuddle bug. Yeah. Anything else here?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Next up. Oops. Oh,
There we go.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Stun guns. What do we
So
got here?
stun guns are something that I was interested in law enforcement. They were just coming out. My chief said no. He was concerned that the batteries would fail and that we would get hurt because we would trust something that wasn't going to be there.
Yeah.
I bought this model stun gun. I owned that stun gun.
Okay.
I used to use it when I did these lectures up at Gender Odyssey, and there's a button where you can press it to get the spark, and the little kind of like teardrop things when they come to a point, that's where it arcs across.
Right here.
And yes,
the arrows.
Yeah, the pins are what touch the person, and the pins are what the electric shock goes into the body. But if there's nothing touching those pins, then it arcs across the air between.
Right.
And it is startling, even in a large conference hall. The crack and the flash of light is startling.
Yeah.
And then one day I pulled it out and I gave the warning about this is going to be startling, and I pressed the button and nothing happened.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I never used it in real life. I only used it for these demonstrations.
Yeah.
So it probably had 5 uses, and
wow.
it died.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
There was a lot to like about the package. It was smaller than a package of cigarettes. It would fit in a pocket. It had its own plug in the base. You didn't even have to have a charger for it.
Yeah.
It was a very high amperage. So when you buy a stun gun, if you're ever going to go there, and I'm recommending not, but if you go there, you want to get the highest amperage you can get, not the highest voltage.
Okay.
Voltage is how far the spark will jump.
Okay.
Amperage is the damage it does inside the body.
Okay.
It's the force behind the. So you slide across a car seat in the wintertime and you touch the door and you get that little spark.
Yes. Yes.
Right. That might be 5,000 volts. Why doesn't it kill you? Because there's no amperage behind it.
Okay. Got it. It's not driving it into you. Is that what you're talking about? Like this drive?
exactly. So
Okay.
you want enough amperage to disrupt the person so they drop.
Got it. Okay.
Um, there are two kinds of stun guns. One is the taser that police use.
Hmm.
Um, it shoots like fish hooks, like straight little
Hmm.
harpoons into the person, and then you pull the trigger and the shock discharges and they drop. But even police quality guns fail.
Right. Well, in
Um,
those cases, it's like both of those hooks have to make contact with the body.
yes,
If one doesn't, then it's useless. Is that correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
No, they both have to connect. Um, and they will penetrate a leather jacket. But if you had something in your coat pocket,
Hmm.
um, it won't penetrate that probably.
Okay.
The other thing is they're not safe to use above the heart, between the
Oh.
heart and the brain.
Okay.
And so um, the more modern tasers have a laser pointer so that you know where it's going to hit.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
um, but even the very best, which start at around $400, they um, they're not perfect.
Yeah.
The little ones, this thing that I bought was maybe $35 or $40. The price on them has dropped to 10. I think when it gets down to free, it's going to be worth what you paid for it.
Okay.
Um, so the
But
cons,
oh,
yes,
I was gonna say it sounds like the common theme, but you're gonna go there. It sounds like it's just like not reliable. Like it might work,
that's
it might not. And in a life
exactly,
or death situation, you can't mess around with unreliable. Is kind of
exactly. That's it
okay.
exactly. Um, on the cons, it can be lethal if it's used above the heart. It can trigger a heart attack.
Okay.
The second thing there is dwell effect. You see in the movies that somebody gets stun gunned, usually in the neck, and they drop and they're out for like hours.
Right.
Um, the truth is that if you, of course, they might get a heart attack and then they'll be out forever. But otherwise, the dwell effect is that the longer the contact with the electricity,
Hmm.
the longer they'll be out. So if it's a half a second, they
Oh,
might not be out at all. If it's a
okay.
full second, they probably will start dropping. But if they drop, they'll pull away from, you've got to hold it on them as they're going down.
Right.
You've got to hold it on them for several seconds to keep them down for, like if you held it on them for 2 or 3 seconds, they might be down for 10 or so seconds.
Right.
So it's not a 2 seconds to 2 second. 2 seconds might equal 8 seconds. 3 seconds might equal 12 seconds,
Yeah.
right? 5 seconds might equal 15 seconds, but that's not a lot of time to get away.
But it is a lot of time to maintain contact with someone
Exactly.
in that environment. Whereas, like what you're saying with the pepper spray, is I can still be back here from you. Like we don't have to be that close contact, and I could still keep that on you, that distance.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's
interesting. Yeah.
that's right. And the second you stop pepper spraying the person, they still pepper sprayed,
I
right? So
see
you
why
can
you prefer
run
this. Yeah.
and they can't see very well and they can't breathe. So if you can run and and even if they're not fully blinded,
Yeah.
they've got restricted airflow.
Yeah.
So they can't run very well.
Yeah. So, oh,
So
I love that distinction. I hadn't quite heard it put that way. That is super, super important. Okay. Anything else here? We talked about.
just that it's unreliable on dogs. Some
Okay.
dogs they will get shocked and that'll be it. And other dogs, you shock them and they will attack you.
Okay.
So it is not a good tool for dogs.
Got it. Okay. That's good to know. All right. Next one. Impact weapons. What do we have
So
here?
I don't like them.
Okay.
Some of the officers, this is an ASP.
Uh huh.
Some police officers carry them. I had back in the old days, the flashlights that were pretty long.
Yeah.
And my flashlight was a C cell, not a D cell.
Okay.
So it was a smaller diameter tube.
Yeah.
And I have hit people as hard as I could swing that thing in non-lethal areas. So from the shoulders down.
Yeah.
And unless you hit him in the groin, it didn't do anything.
Mm,
Um, I know you know from martial arts that there's a lot of nerve endings on the shins,
hmm.
right? And so a heavy blow to the shins, raking downwards,
Yeah.
that should have disabled. No, it didn't. Not at
Okay.
all. It was like useless.
Okay.
Um, so I think impact weapons are only really effective from the shoulders up, but then they're lethal,
Right.
right? You
Okay.
can kill a person. And so it's not a good, it's not a good, if you're looking for non-lethal weapon, it's not where I would go at all.
Okay. And you brought up the flashlight, which I thought was really interesting because I hear that a lot in self defense circles that the flashlight is practically this magical tool because I can shine it in your light and blind you, or in your eyes rather, and blind
Yeah.
you. And if you get too close, I can whack you with it. But you're saying that if I, even if I whack you with it, but it has to be like from here up to be any good because like hitting me in the shins,
Yep.
maybe if I hit you with the D cell, like more substantial in the knee, but you're still. How do you think about that?
Maybe, maybe.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't like the D cells. They were too heavy.
Okay.
Um, and the new flashlights, I have an O light.
Yeah.
It's a LED. It is more powerful than the most powerful flashlight from the 80s when I was a cop.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that if I shine that light in somebody's eyes, they're going to be blinded for many seconds.
Yeah.
The O light, the one that I carry, has this very interesting, I don't have it with me, but it's a very, I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah.
It's got a rim. So the light is inside, and then it's got a rim that has kind of like spikes around it that are of at least a 1/4 inch long.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. So my thought is if you've got an O light and
Yeah.
you've shined it in the person's eyes and they're still coming at you,
Yeah.
you slam it into their cheekbone and you rip it down just
Okay.
like you would with a pen.
Right. Okay. So what the big distinction I'm hearing here, regardless of the weapon, is where you're applying it. So like
Mhm.
from here up is considered legal, or I'm sorry, lethal rather, and that's where the damage can be done. Anything below is not so reliable, and
Yeah.
regardless of the tool, unless we're talking like a gun, I guess. But regardless of the tool, those are some things to keep in mind.
Knives, not so much either, but
Okay.
um, and the Olight is I have one that's about that big, and the
Hmm.
one that I carry when I walk my dog is about that big.
Okay.
So there's no weight to it. I can't crush a person's skull with it, and
Yeah.
I don't want to crush a person's skull. I don't
Yeah.
want to kill somebody with it.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Those distinctions, because there's a lot of people love to talk about weapons, but like, have we really thought through the implications? So I appreciate what you're sharing here. Okay. Anything else here on impact weapons?
No, it's just, we see them in the movies. They're really super, but it's all
Yeah.
stunt. It's not real.
We're in the middle of watching the John Wick trilogy, which is so fun and fantasy, right? But it's just fun. But yeah, it's what's reality. Okay, let's see. Um, pepper gel. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so pepper gel. This particular one, this all comes from the Saber website.
Yeah.
They say it shoots 12 feet. I like that.
Hmm.
The thing that's even better is that there's a much less blowback because the gel
Oh,
tends to stay in the stream.
right,
It doesn't separate from the stream and get carried back to you.
right.
Um, so in the hospital, they use pepper gel so that it would basically, they didn't have to decontaminate the whole area,
Oh,
only just where the
smart.
gel hits.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I'm not sure if you shot a person in the chest with the pepper gel, if it would carry enough up to their eyes, though. I
Have
think you
that
have to
mist.
get them in the eyes.
Okay.
But I prefer pepper gel to pepper spray.
Yeah. It does it
Um,
now. It like we talked about things sticking, right? When we talked about earlier the distinction between oil based and oil based and water based. Now this is a gel. I don't know if it's oil or water, but it's still the idea of sticking to you. Is that
yeah,
also
it
part of
does.
the value?
It does. And I don't know if this particular one is oil or water. I think the ones they used in the hospital, it was water-based gel.
Okay.
Because I talked to them about decontamination and nobody seemed to be concerned about that.
Okay.
It was just simply a washing out with water.
Okay. Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Most of these, the better ones, not all of them, but the better ones all also carry a UV dye, so it's invisible.
Oh,
So if
nice.
you shoot somebody with it
Yeah.
and they rinse it all out, they won't know that their skin has been dyed. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
the UV dye, a police officer with a ultraviolet light could see that, oh, this is the person you sprayed. Yeah, this is, or their clothing or their, right. So it's a way
Right.
of identifying people after the fact.
Oh, that's great. Is that something that you have to like, if you wanted that, you have to look to make sure it has that? It's
Yes,
not standard. Okay.
exactly.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And then I love here, this has a free training video.
I like that about
Yeah.
Saber. I think that Mace, which is the other major brand,
Yeah.
um, Mace started off as the brand name of the purified tear gas,
Yeah.
right? But now is like, um, now the brand includes other products beyond
Right.
that.
It's become general, like tissue and
E-
Kleenex. Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of brands, it seems like you have some favorites. I don't work for them. I don't know if you get a cut, but it seems like maybe these are just based on your experience, what you like. Is that fair to say?
So, um, police departments almost exclusively use either Saber or Mace brand.
Okay.
And I think I don't get a cut. Um,
Okay.
but I think that if people are trusting their lives to the product,
Yeah.
it's a good product endorsement.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a question for you, because sometimes I go to events and people are just kind of handing out pepper sprays and different things. And I'm like, how did, I don't know what the quality of that is, right? Like I could sit there and read the label, but to me, I'm always a little leery of things that are given to me for free in general. Not to
Yeah.
say that, I love the fact that people do hand these out, but is there something, if someone hands you one of these free at an event, do you have any thoughts on that? Should you test it? Should you not use it? Should it be fine? What do you think?
So I think it's the next slide.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I keep wanting to come back to your face.
that's
All
okay. That's okay.
right. So, okay. Yeah, here we go.
Okay, no, this is the slide after this one. So
Okay.
this is a similar one. I carry this one. I
Yeah.
have carried the other one from the last slide, but this is what I now carry.
Okay.
It's pepper spray, tear gas, and dye. And the 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 combination seems to be more potent than pepper spray alone or tear gas alone.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so and you see, it's a very small container. It works up to 10 feet away.
Yeah.
So this little guy does everything that I want it to.
Okay.
And then the next slide. Um, these are things to look for when you're buying pepper spray, and almost for sure. And even though that's a Saber on the with the red arrows
Mm-hmm.
on the left, I used to carry that kind of container. I no longer will. I won't. There's no way I would put that in my pocket or my purse or any other place. And the reason is the safety on the with the red arrows, you have to rotate the cap 90 degrees. You can see that little tab in the back.
Uh-huh. Right here. Uh-huh.
Yes, you rotate that 90 degrees and then the nozzle shows up in that slot, which right now is
Right
blank.
here. Yeah.
And then it's pretty easy to press the cap.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's so easy to rotate that cap that it gets rotated all the time in your purse or your pocket.
Yeah.
And now
Okay.
you're carrying a pepper spray that you're going to have to decontaminate if it goes off,
Right.
and there's no safety. It's just if something presses it, it's going to go
It's
off.
gonna go. Yeah. The safety has been breached because if it's
Exactly. So it's a poorly
interesting.
designed safety. I would not carry that at all.
Okay.
And you've got to remember to do it where the one, now this is also a Saber product,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the same safety as my Mace. That's a flip top. So
Mm-hmm.
you hold the container and you put your thumb under the flip top, and then there's a button inside that you press down.
Right.
and it's very intuitive. It doesn't matter how much stress you're under, you kind of know you've got to flip that up and then you press it down. As you're
Right.
flipping it up, your thumb goes in and then you press down. And so um, I've never had this flip and be open in my pocket or purse.
Perfect. Okay. Well, and I loved what you were saying about the dexterity, because in the moment, right? Like if things are going south and you're frightened and things aren't going well, what happens with our body is adrenaline takes over,
Yep.
and we do lose dexterity. And that's
Yep.
something that, I hear people talking about, well, just call somebody or use your phone. And it's like, you might not have any like uh, circulation to your fingers. So, you
Yeah.
might need to stick with big gross motor movements. So what I'm hearing from you, Erika, is the look for a design in your tool that you don't have to have fine motor skills necessarily.
And you don't have to think
Interesting.
about it.
Yeah, no thinking. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
So
let that
there's one
body
other
take
thing
over.
on that slide, if we can
Yeah,
go back to it.
yeah,
So the arrow, the horizontal arrows on both, you'll
hmm,
notice that the red arrow is a completely straight container. The other one, there's a sort of a lip there,
hmm,
and it's meant to hold your finger under the lip, because what happens, especially if you've got large hands like I do, when you hold the container on the left,
uh-huh.
my index finger covers the nozzle.
Oh,
And I don't
okay.
want to have to think about where's my
Right.
finger when I go to deploy it.
Yeah,
um, when I was a police officer, we used that same flip top.
yeah,
It was a larger canister, but it was a flip top. It's very, very easy to use. But this small one has this, it's got finger notches built
yeah,
into it. And
right.
it's got the biggest notch on top for you to be sure that your index finger is underneath the spray
Oh,
so
that's
that
so
you're not
great.
covering up the spray as you go to use it.
Right. And it looks like, it's designed to grip, like it's in a way kind of foolproof. I play
Yes.
with mine, like being able to how I grab mine, and I never really thought about it, but the way it's designed, my hand always goes to the right spot. Not because
Yes.
I'm so great, but because of how it's designed.
Yes.
So it's Beverly dummy proof.
Well, for
I
all
love
of
it.
us, dummy
All
proof.
of it's dummy proof. Yeah. Oh, that's so
A-
great. Okay.
And the Mace brand has the same notch, right?
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
I like. I like it a lot.
Okay. Whereas we talk about the not notch, over here it's smooth, so there's nothing much to grip. It's not as grippable. And it's interesting, they're both the same company, just the different design
Yep.
distinction. Okay, great, cool. Anything else on that one?
Nope.
All right, let's see what we got here. More do's and don'ts. What are we looking at here, Erika?
Okay, so I had one of those. I bought it in pink. You could buy them in pink or in black.
Nice.
I no longer carry even the pink one.
Yeah.
Um, for somebody that's used to firearms, it's very easy to pick up and use that Mace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like that it had refillable canisters in it, and so um, you could practice with it. They sold canisters that were water. They sold canisters that are tear gas. That little silver thing that's above the trigger, that's
Mm-hmm.
the safety. You can put it back or forward. It's
Mm-hmm.
got a little light bulb in front of the trigger guard,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
so so that at night you can see the target that you're pointing at.
Yeah.
The problem is that, especially at night, you can see that it'd be very hard to tell the difference between
Yeah.
somebody with a 38 revolver pointing at you and a mace thing.
Yeah.
And remember the law of self-defense.
Yeah.
You don't have to be right. It's a reasonable mistake. And so if somebody pulled out their mace gun
Mm-hmm.
and pointed it, the other person would be fully justified in shooting them with a firearm.
Right.
Because
Wow.
even though the mace is non-lethal, it looks so much like a lethal weapon that that would be a reasonable mistake.
The
And
way
you
it's
don't want to create the situation where you have signaled that I've got this thing that looks like a gun, because now you can use your gun and kill me with it. And no, it's
Okay.
like bringing a knife to a gunfight, only it's not even as good as a knife.
So it's like you're it looks like you're starting a gunfight, but you're not even prepared for that. And so,
Exactly,
oh,
exactly.
okay. Yeah, if
So
you
I do not recommend this at all.
good distinction. Yeah, and for folks, if you haven't seen the conversation Erika gave that we had about law of self defense, please check it out. It's part 3 of this series. Erika has her law degree. She served on both sides as a prosecutor and defender. So there's some good stuff there. So this is super important. I think this is a good application of the kind of maybe more theoretical stuff we talked about. So that's super important. Okay. Anything else on this one?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. What do we
I
have
have
here?
one of these little puppies. I have it in red because I don't want anybody to think that I've got a real gun.
Okay.
The red one looks like a squirt gun.
Yeah.
Um, and so that white tab in front of the trigger pivots and you can knock it out when you,
Right
yeah,
here.
right there,
Okay.
when you put your finger into the trigger guard. It comes in 2 versions, one that's just completely like rectangular and the other has this very tiny little handle grip on it. I like this one. And what this does that's different from any other is there's probably a 22 blank cartridge. This is 2-shot. So there's 2 independent containers of pepper gel. And then when you pull the trigger, it fires the blank, which then acts as the propellant that shoots the pepper gel at the person at about 100 feet per second. So they
Wow.
can't duck.
Yeah.
Somebody can see this in my purse and think, oh, I've got a squirt gun
Right.
or a toy gun. It doesn't look anything like a real gun.
Right.
But I've got 2 shots at about, I've seen demonstrations, YouTube videos of using this at about 10 feet. The circle of gel is about a foot in diameter.
Wow.
So you've got to aim it, but
Yeah.
it's also, if you know how to shoot and you know how to aim, this is a really intuitive weapon that's completely non-lethal. That hits so hard that if the person's wearing goggles or eyeglasses, that it will splatter and get underneath them.
That's remarkable. Wow. Okay.
And it's made in Switzerland. It's actually a pretty quality product,
Okay.
pretty high quality product.
Okay. Great. Oh, this is not one I'm familiar with. This is great. Okay. Oh, are we moving on to lethal weapons?
Yep.
All right.